It is now time for the Let's Talk Weddings podcast. Here's your host, wedding DJ and MC of Buzzard Ball DJ Entertainment in Sacramento, California, Steve Buzzard.
Hello everyone and welcome in. It is another edition of Let's Talk Weddings. This is going to be the first solo episode where I'm going to give you a breakdown of the ceremony. The way I intend this is you may be a new DJ out there that is wondering, what does it look like to set up for a ceremony? Now remember, this would be part of a series, right? Because a wedding is a whole experience. Of course, you first have to bring on the couple, what happens leading up to wedding day. Those are all episodes that will come in the future. Then you have, obviously, arrival, the ceremony, which will be the first thing that happens. And then to follow that, you got cocktail hour, dinner, and then the reception. So our focus today is primarily going to be on the ceremony. I'm going to break it down for you. Number one will be setup. Number two, microphones, because audio and sound is very, very important, especially when it comes to the ceremony. The Officiant actually has its own category because they are definitely a spotlight within the ceremony. And then, of course, music. That would be handled by the DJ. And then number five, just extras, okay? So that'll be the breakdown. We'll cut it in the middle, maybe give you some fun facts. In fact, I kind of looked into what are some favorite songs that take place in the, processional, which is coming in to the ceremony, and the recessional, which is going out of the ceremony, is kind of interesting. I have a take on it, and of course, we'll share some songs with you. So here we go. I'm really excited. I want to say thank you for stopping by. We have just launched this journey. I tell my story. I was inspired by Matt Campbell, and Matt Campbell has a website called myweddingsongs.com. He also has a podcast of which I was able to be a guest on, and he does such a great job. He's been talking to vendors for well over 130 plus episodes, and that's kind of what we're doing here, and maybe just going a little bit deeper. And then you get things like this where you get a solo episode where we break things down. So I want to be respectful of your time, and do know that the beauty of the podcast is that this episode is going to stand alone. So no matter when you listen to it, all right, you could take and go, okay, I can apply some of those things. Now, do things change in the industry? Absolutely. Here's another thing. Everything I'm going to tell you is what works for me. Okay, and it doesn't mean it works for everyone. And that is the other thing you need to realize. Is kind of like your parents, right? Your parents do their best job. And when you become an adult, you throw away the bad, you keep the good, and then you make the rest your own, okay? So the same thing applies here to being a wedding DJ. So first thing you notice is how I look, okay? And I think this is very important. You have to establish who you're going to be when you arrive. Now, when I arrive, I do not arrive dressed like this. I will arrive in a more casual wear. The reason being, I've got to do all my setup, okay? Now think about the summer months. I don't want to sweat in what I'm going to be wearing for the wedding that day. So I always come, maybe shorts, joggers, very comfortable shirt, and I set up. I always arrive 2 hours before. Again, this will be part of another episode, but this will kind of give you a feeling or a foundation leading into the ceremony, all right? But the look is so important. So once I've done my setup and I change, this is how I look. I am a standard white shirt guy to kind of honor the fact that it is a wedding. My difference is with the tie. So I buy my ties from the tie bar, okay? I am not partnered with them, but I am willing to give them the endorsement because they have been very, very good to me. Their ties are very affordable, and I just get one in every color you can think of. Now, I could go to designs, but the reason why I do all the colors is because one of my questions that I ask my couples is, what are your wedding colors? And once they tell me, guess what tie I'm showing up in is going to be one of their wedding colors. So here's the standard navy blue. I've got one in every color. And then for me, I don't know why I started this, but I roll my sleeves up, okay? And for me, it's kind of my preparation, when an athlete gets ready for a game. It's the same thing for me. I feel like this is like an indicator, like I'm rolling my sleeves up and I'm ready to go to work, okay? So that is my look. There are others that have different looks. Some will wear tuxedos. I've seen that. I know my good friend Joe Calamaris, who was the first episode here on Let's Talk Weddings, he likes to wear a bow tie, and that's his signature, and I absolutely love that. Okay, so number one, the setup. Okay, so we're going to get into the setup. Setup for ceremony, I always do after I have the reception set up, which is my main setup for the dancing, and then also cocktail hour, okay? So sometimes I might have just 2 setups. No doubt about it, when I set up for the ceremony, it's always going to be a separate setup from my reception. The reception is always going to be the main setup. The only time I would have a 3rd setup is if the cocktail hour is somewhere different than the reception or the ceremony. Okay? So you have venues where everything's all inclusive, but no matter what, I will always have 2 setups. So my setup is very simple. I have Evolve's EV50s, I believe they are called. They are tower speakers. I went with white. Everybody loves the white, again, signifying the wedding. And I will have 1 speaker. That is all I need. Now, I can't remember the last time I've done a wedding where there have been 250 people and above. If there was 250 and above, I would definitely consider having a 2nd speaker. But for all the weddings that I've done the past few years, even pre-COVID, I've always used 1 speaker, and that has been quite enough. All right. So I can tell you in California, the average after COVID is somewhere between, I've had as low as 30 up to about 180. Okay. So 30 through 180. So I set up 1 speaker. I have 2 microphones, and my music source is usually going to be my iPad. All right. So we'll get to music in a second, but that is just the basic setup. Now, when you set up for a ceremony, it is very important that you are not in the way of the photographer. What do I mean by that? Okay. That means you are either going to be in the back to either the left or right corner, or to the front to the far left or right corner, so that you are not in the way of the bridal party when they come up. Some, couples have small bridal parties and others have very big ones. I've actually done a wedding where it was a Mormon wedding and there were 13 bridesmaids and there were 13 groomsmen. I mean, imagine that, right? So your setup is always going to be back and to the corner, okay, with the speaker angling toward the audience. So that's number 1, to make sure that you are out of the way. Obviously, you want to look for a power source. So I always recommend that you bring a couple of extension cords, right, because that's very big, because you don't know where that power source is going to be. A lot of this I will do in kind of the prelim, meaning if I don't know the venue well, I might give them a call and say, hey, can you kind of tell me about your ceremony setup? How close would I be to power? Now, most venues that have a ceremony, they'll have a nice power source that will be in the spot that you will be in, okay? So there's some times where I've been in the front, flanked off to the left or right. There's been a lot of times I'm usually in the back, flanked off to the left or right, okay? So the setup is either to the side and to the back. Shaded area with a fan. Now that's coming from California, so we know we got different parts of the country that look a little different. So anytime Mother Nature is involved, I am talking from the sunny side of things, you always want to make sure you're shaded, all right? Because here's the deal. Your equipment is not going to operate well in heat, all right? I have found that out, and it has happened to me. So sometimes you learn the hard way, is I did have my equipment overheat, and it just breaks down, right? And so you got to wait for it to cool off before you can bring it back up. You never want that to happen. Again, learn the hard way. So some things I look for, obviously shade, invested in an umbrella, and a fan. So those things I think are must if you deal with weddings in hot weather. If you can get that shaded area, that is going to make all the difference in the world. You add that fan, you add that umbrella, everything you can do to keep your equipment very cool, okay? And it may not be your mixer. So I think the mixers can endure most. Where I found my problems is with my laptop and also with the microphones, right? So the main component for the microphones. And I will tell you, I have searched high and low for something that cools your laptop. And I'm just going to tell you, there have been some things, but they are no good. I have not found anything yet. So if you're out there and you're like, you know what, I have an idea for you, Steve, please let me know. Message me, because I have been searching for something that would cool the laptop during my time. Okay, so we got shaded area along with the fan. Usually I would bring a 4-foot or 6-foot table, and I would use a standard white tablecloth. Now, the tablecloths that I enjoy are the ones that fit and snug underneath, not the ones that just lay over. I think they have a cleaner look to them, and definitely go with white. I don't go with black, because black would indicate that maybe you're at a funeral. We don't want that. It's all about the white. It's all about the wedding. All right? So that is the setup. Let's go ahead and recap that. First of all, I'm going to get there 2 hours ahead of time. No matter what, get there ahead of time. I'm a 2-hour guy. I'm a type A. That's how I like to go about it. Setting up, you're always going to be to the back or to the front, but off into the corner, okay? Never in direct sight of the photographer who is probably taking pictures, okay? Does that make sense? And then we mentioned shaded area. Obviously, if you do sunny weddings here in California, and then bring a 4 or 6 foot table with a white tablecloth. That is my recommendation. That's what works for me. Now, there are times when you can ask the venue, hey, can you provide a table? That's fine. But I'll tell you what I ran into is when I would ask that question, I would get some yeses, some nos. And at the time where I only had one table, that means I was using the table for the ceremony and then moving over to the reception. I learned, you know what, I'm always going to have 2 tables. So I always bring my own stuff. It is just less work for the venue, less work for the wedding coordinator, and less work for me. Meaning, yeah, okay, I've got to put an extra table in my truck, but guess what? I'm all set, all right? So number 1, setup. Number 2, microphones. Oh my goodness. Microphones are so big, especially through the ceremony. Now, I use 2 microphones. Number 1 microphone is for the officiant, and number 2 is for the couple if they share their vows, okay? And I'll break that down in a moment. Here is the number 1 thing. First of all, always 2 microphones. Don't just do it with 1. Invest in 2, no matter what. Because what happens if the first microphone goes down? What are you going to do if you don't have a second microphone? You always want to have a backup, okay? And I'll dive a little bit more deeper into that. Now, for me, I think this is very big. The audio, for me, is the biggest thing during the ceremony. Yes, there's going to be the music, right? Which we're going to break down in just a moment. But being able to hear the officiant and being able to hear the couple when they share their vows, ultra important, and you do not want to miss the mark, all right? So, I go with Audio Technica ATW R3210 series, okay? I go with their receiver. You don't have to get that one, but here's what I'm going to tell you. Spend the money, invest in one of the best microphones on the market. You figure out what it is and then invest. Do not shortcut the purchase of your microphones. Did you hear me? Do not shortcut the purchase of your microphones. Believe you me, this is really, really important, okay? And the reason why is because the microphones are just so important, especially to the ceremony. Later on, obviously, in the dinner portion, when you give the speeches, you're going to want a great microphone. So I went with Audio Technica, but there are plenty of companies out there that do a good job. So do your research, figure out what works for you, and then go with it. And how many are you going to buy? Not 1, but 2, okay? Now, I think it is important. My preference is the handheld microphone. But when we get to the Officiant, which is coming up next, the Officiant, probably 8.5 times out of 10, will prefer to have the lapel mic. The reason being is that the Officiant is going to be holding something, so they don't want to hold a handheld mic. Now, that is not true for all officiants, but I'm just telling you, usually when I deal with officiants, 8.5 times out of 10, they're going to prefer the lapel. So you want to get a great lapel mic, and then you want to have a great handheld mic. Now, along with that lapel mic, I have a second handheld mic. So I have 2 systems. One has a handheld and a lapel, and the other one is just a handheld. Okay, so I've got plenty of coverage. Now, with the lapel mic, here is what I'm going to share with you. I believe lapel mics have a mind of their own. All right. So you can be dialed in on the channel, right? And you can have everything synced. You can test the lapel mic and it sounds great. And you're like, oh, this is beautiful. It's going to sound great. Ceremony starts and all of a sudden the officiant is talking and then it's cutting out. That is what happens with the lapel mic. And I'm here to tell you there is no rhyme or reason. There truly isn't. I have tried to figure it out, and I tell you, it sends a DJ into a frenzy because after you've done all the work with a sound check, to then have that happen when you're like, why did that happen? It's just a mystery, and it's one I have not been able to figure out. So that's why when I go to the officiant, I will often kind of persuade them to go with the handheld mic, because I will tell you with the handheld mic, you are closer to 100% than you are with the lapel mic. All right, so just my 2 cents there, and we'll continue on. Definitely prefer windscreens, so make sure that you put a windscreen on both the lapel mic. That's going to block out any wind. It won't block it out totally. If you have gusts of wind, there's nothing you can do about it, right? But it will definitely kind of, I would say, patch that down. Same for the handheld. I always go with the nice screens that you put on top. And again, it just is going to add to the quality. So when I am doing a ceremony, when I see the Officiant, I'll have a conversation. My first question is, hi, well, first of all, introduce myself. Glad to be working with you. What is your preference, a handheld or lapel mic? And I will let them tell me and then go with that, because that goes to the customization of the wedding for the couple, which I think is very important. I am not going, listen, I want them to use a handheld mic, but again, that is going to be their decision, because in this case, it's what they're comfortable with, all right? So I have the top of the line lapel mic. And I do tell them that, listen, sometimes the lapel mic, and some of them know this from past experience, I'll say it's got a mind of its own. So if it cuts out, what I want you to do is to continue to talk. And if I feel it gets too bad, I might rush in there from the backside and give you that handheld mic. Now, the handheld mic, the Officiant might be holding for the couple, or they might have it in a spot behind them, but that's going to be our backup if the lapel mic does not do its job, okay? Now, with the lapel mic that I have to tell you, has a great success rate, but I always have to be prepared for that, because when it happens, because it's a mystery, it's like, okay, got to have the handheld to back it up. So you want to make sure lapel mic is good, you've got it all tested out, and then the handheld is going to be the one that is going to be used by the couples. Now, with the couples, I always give them options. I say, hey, you can hold the handheld mic, you could read to your bride or your groom, or you could have the Officiant hold it, or you could have someone, the best man or maid of honor, hold it. I would say the third option usually does not happen. It's usually the couples who are fine holding it themselves, or it's the Officiant that is holding it for them. Okay, does that make sense? So, because again, you want it to be as easy as possible. But to me, in the ceremony, their lines to each other, the personal vows, not the repeat, okay? Because the repeat you're going to get with the lapel mic that the Officiant has, it's the ceremony and those vows when they're exchanging those that you want everybody to hear. Yeah, believe me, I've been to places where they actually, if we go to like state parks or something, sometimes they won't allow a microphone. That's right, they have to just use their outside voice. That does not go well. Everybody that is there as a guest, they want to hear those personal vows. So that is my take on microphones, okay? So we have our setup, right? 2 hours before, making sure we're good to go with our setup. And then we have our microphones, which, by the way, you always want to test. Make sure they're all dialed in, okay? For me, what I personally do when I'm ready to go and I'm ready to give the microphone to the Officiant, and I'm ready to put the microphone that's either going to go to the Officiant used by the couple or set in place, I will have them turned on and I will have the volume down on my speaker. So master volume, which I control from the back. Some DJs will use a mixer. I do not use a mixer because of my speakers. I can do it right from the back of the speaker, which is really nice and very convenient for me. I will have it all the way down. The reason I do that, I want the least amount of work for the Officiant and the couples. Meaning, I don't want them to have to fish in their pocket to try to turn on their lapel mic or even figure out how to turn the microphone. Now, I could tell them, but I will tell you, if you're going to do that, there's going to be a very good chance that they forget how to do it, or they do something wrong, or they turn something off and something's not right, and then you're coming up there for a reason that you don't need to come up there. So have everything in place. That way you control when it is time. So for the Officiant, I will tell them, your volume is going to be down until I see you in the position ready to start the wedding. Okay, so what that does for the Officiant, they're hanging out with the wedding party before the ceremony. That is a guarantee that they don't have to worry about anything coming out over the speaker prior to the ceremony. So there we have it, set up, microphones, and finally, before we go to our break, our only break with some fun facts for you, is the Officiant. Now, I've touched on a lot of things, but I also want to hit a couple of extra things that are important. The Officiant is definitely a highlight in the ceremony. You as a DJ, you're a highlight. The Officiant would be a highlight as well, right? They are the ones that are marrying the couple. They are controlling the flow of the ceremony. Ceremonies can vary, right? They could be, I've done one as short as 3 minutes, and I've done others that have gone somewhere in the half-hour range, okay? And with the half-hour range, there maybe are some components where maybe the couple has a couple people or guests do a reading. There might be a unity candle. There's other special things that take place that maybe make it a little bit longer. I would say the average from what I've seen is anywhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 minutes, okay? Some shorter, some longer, but that kind of gives you a feel. So it's amazing when you go through all that setup and it's just for that short amount of time, but it's a very important short amount of time. So going over the Officiant, like I said before, 8.5, 9, 10 times out of 10, the Officiant will prefer a lapel microphone. Some have said, yeah, I'll do a handheld, and that's because maybe some Officiants, what they'll do is they'll put their notes like on an iPad or maybe a notebook or something, and they can hold it in one hand and be able to handle the microphone with the other. And again, it's the choice of the Officiant, and I am going to go with that. So lapel or handheld. Oh yeah, here's a big one. Okay, in my notes I was looking at this. This is a big one. Okay, and Officiants, no matter how much experience they have, when everyone comes in and everyone's settled, what do you think is the first thing they need to say before they continue on? Do you got it? Do you got it? Yes, please be seated. Okay, those are the magic words right there. Sometimes guests will figure out, but I have had a lot of Officiants, and listen, the Officiants have nerves too, right? It's pretty nervous being up there, knowing that you're in charge of this wedding ceremony, and you forget to say the words, yes, you may now be seated. But make sure, Officiants out there, that you say, please be seated, okay? Another one is when you get to the end, and you say, it is now time to kiss your bride, or you may kiss your bride. And a lot of Officiants know this, but you want to stand out of the way. Do you know why? It's for the photographer, right? When they get that first kiss, after they have been announced as Mr. and Mrs., that Officiant needs to duck out of the way so they are not in that photo. And again, most Officiants are very good at that, but these are just some tips that I've seen along the way. And I think the next important one is making sure that you introduce the new couple. So me as the DJ, what I am doing is I am waiting for the cue to play what is called the recessional song. So again, processional is defined as the song coming into the ceremony. Recessional is the song going out of the ceremony, meaning you've been announced as the new Mr. and Mrs. But it is very important that the Officiant, after that first kiss takes place, that they step back in there and they say something to the effect of, and now for the first time, let me introduce to you Mr. and Mrs. fill in the blank, right? And then boom, I hit the music, they go out, bridal party goes out, and then usually what will happen on my end is I'll dip that music down, let the Officiant make their announcement. Once they make the announcement, I bring the music back up, let it play out, and then as soon as the music is done, I am done. All right, so that's the ceremony part. And let me make sure I did not miss anything. Oh yes, okay, one more, and this might be a little pet peeve. And if you're an Officiant out there, I think you know this, it's about the couple. It is not about the Officiant, all right? And I have seen some Officiants that make the ceremony about them. And whether they mean it or not, or even know that they're doing it, I think it is very important to go in and do your job. Okay, you don't have to be vanilla, right? Because a lot of times you'll have Officiants that are maybe related. They get the online certification to be able to be the Officiant of the ceremony. But I think making it more about the couple, in fact, 99% about the couple and a lot less than you. You are directing the ship. It's kind of my mantra that I keep as a DJ, right? It's not about me as the DJ or the MC. It's about the couple that I'm serving to make sure that I'm steering their ship. So I believe the same thing is true for the Officiant. You are there to steer your ship. Now, I will tell you on the Officiant side, very interesting position. I've seen some that are straightforward, and I've seen others who do a very good job of telling the couple's stories. And I have to say, I love those Officiants that help me get a picture of who this couple is outside of the conversations that I've already had with them. as a DJ. So, hey, I applaud all Officiants. They do a great job. So that is the first part of what hopefully has been very helpful to you. This could be for couples out there that are wondering how a ceremony is broken down. It also, I hope, is for DJs out there that are just getting started to really get a picture of what the ceremony looks like. I go back to my initial point. This is not a blueprint. This is just what works for me, has worked for me for almost 20 years. I've learned along the way. Some bad things have happened to me along the way. And usually you never want those to happen, but when they do happen, you learn from them and you say, okay, that will never happen again. So we've hit setup, we've hit microphones, and we hit the officiant. We're going to take a break and I'm going to have a fun fact for you, which basically is kind of what songs are being played for processional coming in and recessional going out. And I think you'll well be served, especially if you're a couple out there, when we give you those fun facts. And then we're going to come back and we're going to go ahead and focus on the main part outside of the couple getting married, and that would be the music, right? Talk about the music before the ceremony, during the ceremony, and after the ceremony, and then we'll have some extra tips for you before we close out this episode. This is Let's Talk Weddings. I'm your host, Steve Buzzard of Buzzard Ball DJ Entertainment in Sacramento, California. We'll dip away for a quick, fun fact. All right, hope you enjoyed that first part of this solo episode. It is episode number 5. Hey, want to thank Matt Campbell of MyWeddingSongs.com, proud partner with him. He was also a guest on this show, and I was a guest on his podcast, and you can check that out at My Wedding Songs Podcast. All you have to do is look it up. They are on all platforms, also on YouTube. But I wanted to share with you, since he is the wedding song guy, it's pretty interesting with processionals, right? A lot of people think of the classics, right? Air on the G string. Let's see, there's Pachelbel's Canon in D, Wagner's Bridal Chorus. Those are the ones that people traditionally know. I am here to tell you that in the last, almost 200 weddings that I've done, I have played any of those maybe twice, maybe 3 times. They don't occur, okay? When you talk about a wedding, people in the modern day are going away from what would be, I guess, traditional to songs that really encapsulate who the couple is, all right? So when you have songs that come in, the bride is definitely picking something that is going to be customized toward her. The songs coming in on the processional, I would definitely say there are more instrumentals that are taking place. And that is my fun fact for you, that the traditional Canon in D, the Air on the G string, it ain't happening. It is more of the instrumental that is taking place for the processional. And on the recessional, again, there's, the traditional songs that are very similar, very classical and stuff. Yeah, that's not happening either, right? We are not in a cathedral. A lot of these weddings are outside and maybe not inside of a church. You have an outdoor venue, indoor venue, and they're playing songs that are really fun and really bringing kind of the high energy for the couples. So there you have it, a fun fact about processional songs and recessional songs. Now let's get to the professional voice that will bring us back into the program.
Now back to Let's Talk Weddings, where wedding dreams meet industry experts. This is your backstage pass to the world of wedding vendors. Here is your host, Steve Buzzard.
Welcome back. It is Let's Talk Weddings. We are so glad you are with us. New journey for me. Again, my name is Steve Buzzard. I am a wedding DJ and MC in the greater Northern California area. Usually Sacramento, but I go on the outskirts. Admittedly, haven't done any Bay Area weddings, although that would be a lot of fun. But Sacramento and above, and probably a radius of maybe 40 to 90 miles. And I say 90 miles because on occasion, I'll do those beautiful weddings up in Lake Tahoe, which is a great place to go to do a wedding. And today we're talking about the ceremony setup. It's interesting because in my mind I thought, okay, this would be like kind of a short episode, but I realized, there's more detail than you realize. And it's so fun for me. And this is part of why I love being a wedding DJ, because I love the preparation that goes in. And so in the first part of this episode, we talked about setup. We talked about microphones, ultra important. And we talked about the Officiant, which is a big part of the ceremony. Now, music, which to me, that's the biggie, right? That's what I'm in charge of. In addition to sound, music is the big thing. So pre-ceremony, here's my golden rule of thumb. I always start pre-ceremony music 30 minutes prior to the start of the ceremony, okay? 30 minutes prior, all right? So 4 o'clock start, I'm starting the music 30 minutes prior. Now, if I'm at a ceremony and people start arriving earlier than 30 minutes, then I am starting music. So I should preface this by saying, not preface, but kind of put an addendum. 30 minutes is the number, but if someone comes early, that's when I'm starting the music. So it's either 30 minutes or first arrival of a guest, okay? Now, on my Spotify playlist, which by the way, you are welcome to go in. I make it public because, see, I'm at a point in my life right now where, yes, I love doing weddings, but I want to share the knowledge, because I know for me, what has been big has been listening to podcasts and being able to look at other wedding DJs to help me. I feel like you're always learning, and now to be a part of that universe where I can give back. I mean, for me, man, the vision for me is DJs reaching out to me saying, hey, Steve, man, great episode on the ceremony breakdown. I tried this and it worked. Or even on the flip side, hey, Steve, I'm a DJ in New Orleans, Louisiana, and guess what? This is how we do weddings or wedding ceremonies. That's what I love, because we can all learn from each other. So Spotify playlists, I build a whole wedding category. And for the pre-ceremony, I will tell couples, hey, go in, check out the pre-ceremony music, and just tell me what your vibe is, okay? So here are the ones that I have. I have Daniel Jane, okay? I have Brooklyn Duo, Piano Guys. I have a country, which is an instrumental country pre-ceremony, bridesmaid quartet, and then just an instrumental place, and then piano, okay? So those are basic. I'm going to share with you what I believe is my favorite. So it's depending on the vibe, but the one I go to most that I actually love, and you can check it out for yourself, is Music Travel Love. This is a duo. These guys are amazing. They do sing, but it's all kind of like modern day songs that they sing, and just has this great vibe to it. So I invite couples to go in. Spotify playlist, I'll give it to you. It's SC Buzzard. We'll put it down in the show notes too, and you can check it out. And if you're a DJ out there, go ahead and use these. Go ahead and share it over to yourself, or make, just drag the songs over, make your own playlist, because if you can provide this for a couple, this is absolutely huge, because you are simply asking them, go check it out and tell me what vibe you want to go with. And once they tell you what that vibe is, then you can go, okay, this makes sense, all right? And here's the other thing. The other end of the spectrum is you're going to have couples that say, hey, Steve, we trust you, right? So if it's a country wedding, I'm going to go to the country pre-ceremony playlist. Doesn't make sense to do another type of pre-ceremony music, because I want everything to tie in with the whole experience, okay? So 30 minutes prior, and that is leading up to what would be the processional. Now, the processional is going to be the wedding coordinator telling me that we are ready to start with the first part of music, okay? So let me break that down for you. This goes in the extras, but I'm going to go ahead and bring it up. No wedding starts on time, okay? Every wedding is late, okay? There have maybe been a handful in my 200 or so weddings where it has started on time, but more often than not, you're going to be 5 minutes late, you're going to be 15 minutes late. I've done some where it's been 30 to 45 minutes late. It happens. But the beautiful thing with the wedding is we as professional vendors, if it gets behind, we can usually catch up later, okay? So just know that no wedding starts on time. So those playlists that I build out, they're not 30 minutes long, right? They're at least an hour, hour and a half, because of situations like I just said. You might be late. In fact, you will be late. And so I want to have music that is going to lead right up to the processional. Now, a lot of people ask, how many songs are in a processional? And it varies, okay? You're at least going to have 2, and sometimes have 3, and you might even have 4. 4 is a rare occasion. 3 is a small percentage. 2 is usually the magic number. So let's go with the 2 spot, and then I'll tell you what the variations are if you have 3 or 4. Okay? You are usually going to have one song that is going to be for the officiant. Now, the officiant might already be in place, but sometimes they will walk up. That is then followed by the groom, right, and their family and other family members. So you've got the bride side and the groom side. They come up, they split off, they go in the front row seats, and then boom, you go into the bridal party, all right? You go all the way through the bridal party. Once you are done with the bridal party, that second song, okay, is going to be for who? The bride, right? And so what you do is you do a pause, right? And then you bring the music up. Now, I'm always in communication with the wedding coordinator. We're kind of looking at each other. By the way, as a wedding DJ, you always want to make sure you're paying attention to things. Don't be getting wandering off, wandering eyes, not knowing what you're doing, trying to figure out what music you're going to play. That's why you come 2 hours early. You got to get everything dialed in. When it's showtime, it is showtime. You can't mess up then. So the wedding coordinator will give me that indication. Now, my favorites are barn weddings where you have the pause and then you strike up the next song for the bride and then the barn doors open. Oh my gosh, those are absolutely my favorite. Barns at Willow Creek comes to mind in Marysville, California. Oh man, it's so good. They do that every time and it gets me every time. And it's really cool because sometimes I'll see the bride beforehand and say hello and maybe take a picture or something like that. But sometimes I kind of like to go, and if it's not, doesn't happen by chance, it's great to see the bride for the first time. And that's true for everybody that is there at the ceremony. So anyways, good stuff right there. So the song, 2 songs. Now, if you do 3 songs, sometimes the groom will have their own song. And I am of the belief that the groom deserves their own song. Okay, so if you're a groom out there and you're like, well, wait, the bride gets a song. This is my day too. You know what? Do a song for yourself. It probably won't be as long. In fact, it will be probably maybe just as long as the bride because you're making the same walk. Okay, so then it would be groom, maybe followed by family. So groom and family would have one song. And then the bridal party would have their own song, and then you would move into the bride song. Okay, so that's if you did a 3-song variation. Now, you heard me mention 4 songs. Well, there's a new trend, okay? Do you know what I'm talking about? Yes, the beer guy or the beer girls or whatever. And these are the people that kind of are going to bring high energy to the ceremony, right? So the ceremony is very traditional, but the beer guy or gal are going to come into their own song. It's usually a fun song that has the word beer in it. Luke Combs comes to mind. Maybe a Don't Stop Believin' comes to mind. And they're passing out beers to the audience before we get to the rest of the bridal party. So standard is a 2-song variation. 3-song variation if the groom wants their own song. And then if you got the beer guys or girls who come in before everybody and we start the ceremony, then it will be a 4-song variation, all right? So when the bride gets up there, another little tip for you, what I like to do with the song, actually, let me address this first. Okay, what about bridal parties that have a big number, right? Like I mentioned the 13, if they were coming down, right? How much song do you need? I always tell bride and grooms, don't worry about it, leave it to me. Okay, we have the power and the capability of being able to fade out of a song and come back in. Now, I do repeat songs, but I do it in a way that it kind of meshes together that you didn't even know that the song ended. Does that make sense? Okay, and I do it really quick. Okay, I do not in GarageBand mesh a song together to make it double the length. Believe me, okay? Everyone is okay as long as it sounds smooth. So I'll volume out, restart the song, volume in, and there's no hesitation. No hesitation. Nice fade in, back in, and away we go. Okay, so that's one thing. When the bride comes in on her song, I don't do a cut, right? You want it to sound smooth. That's why we're the professional DJ. So what I do for my couples is that, when you come up, you might hear the officiant say, who, presents this bride, my wife and I, you'll hear all that. That's over the microphone. What I do is I dip it down low and I keep it low until I hear the officiant say the words, "You may be seated," or they start to go into the ceremony, and then I do a fade out. I do not fade out the music as soon as they get up to the front. Again, it's just, I think, a better transition, and sounds better when you can nicely fade out, okay? So that brings us into processional. So we mentioned groom and family, bridal party, bride. When bride gets to the front, drop the volume down as the officiant tells the guests to be seated. Very good. Now, the next song normally you're going to play is going to be the recessional. But as we have spoken about, where we've had ceremonies that are 3 minutes long and others that might be closer to a half hour, you might have some special songs in between. So for example, the special songs that I play would be either if the couple were taking communion and or if they were doing a candle ceremony, okay, or a sand ceremony. A unity candle, it's unity candle, and some will do sand ceremonies. So when you have second marriages, there might be stepchildren involved, and maybe they all come up and they put sand all together in a vase or whatever. I will have music for that. I try to stay away from music that have lyrics to it unless the couple is very specific with what they want. Otherwise, I am playing a nice instrumental to go underneath that. So again, I'm listening for the officiant cue. Hey, we are now going to go to a sand ceremony where the couple is going to do such and such. Boom, I'm bringing that music up. Let it play. Let them enjoy that moment. As soon as it's done, they get back into place. Boom, fade it down. In the meantime, okay, the microphone is always on unless I'm instructed for it to be off, okay? And everything goes well. So again, just those are the only special things I do. I don't know if there's other special things that happen within a ceremony in different parts of the country, but if so, please let me know. And then also, so the music, communion or unity candle, recessional, okay? And I kind of already hit this when I was talking about the officiant. Very important that you have it on the timing, okay? And the timing and the cue is very simple. For the officiant, when they say, I now announce for the first time, Mr. and Mrs. fill in the blank, boom, that's when I hit it, okay? That's when I hit the music, let it come. It's usually a really fun, high energy song, and a lot of couples will go with a lot of different variations. I don't do instrumentals on the recessional. I think it's a lot different than the processional. Processional is really kind of special and nice. Recessional, now we're cranking it up to say it's a celebration. So it's usually a high, upbeat song, all right? And I'll play that song to, again, the officiant. If they are making announcements, the bridal party has left, I'll drop the music down. The officiant makes the announcement. Once they're done, boom, I bring that music up, turn the officiant's volume off so they don't have to worry about anything going over the speaker. Let the song play out, and then once we're done, boom, we're breaking down the ceremony, okay? So let's see, bring back on this. Okay, I got it. That's the music portion. I want to make sure that I hit all those notes. And then for ceremony breakdown, depending on where I'm at, if I'm transitioning to cocktail hour, this is not really within the episode, but I'll give it a quick mention. I will go start music for the cocktail music, and that's either I'm going to be on site at a venue that is kind of all encompassing. Sometimes I might have to drive back because there's some that are separated. I'll start cocktail music and I'll break down. Okay, so I'll break down the ceremony. If I'm in different places, put it in my truck, rejoin my reception. Boom. But at least the cocktail hour music is playing and I don't have to worry about it. That is the only time that I will go off a playlist and let it run. All right, is the cocktail hour. I really make sure that I have those cocktail hour playlists intact. In fact, if you go to my Spotify playlist, I've got cocktail hour. I know this is getting a little ahead of myself, but worth mentioning. I've got 16 different playlists that will help with cocktail hour, that will give different vibes. And again, you can check that out on my Spotify, which is SC Buzzard. All of my playlists are public for you. All right, the last thing are the extras, and then we're going to say goodbye for this episode. I really hope this episode has been helpful for you. But let's see, extras I have down. Making announcements before or after the ceremony for the officiant. I think we kind of hit on that. Again, that's just communication with the officiant to say, hey, where are going to be the times that you're going to speak outside of the parts that I know? And that would be, are you going to make any announcements? Sometimes they'll make the announcement of making sure that cell phones are, turned off, that kind of thing. So you want to make sure you're in charge of that. We already mentioned no wedding starts on time. That is so true. And have a number of different pre-ceremony playlists. We've gone over that. And consider having the guests stay seated Oh, this is a big one. I'm glad I wrote this down. This actually came about where a bride actually said, I want my guests to stay seated. Now listen, this goes either way, because the traditional thing that the officiant will say is once we see the bride, right, they'll say, all guests please stand, all right? But I had a bride that said, well, I was at a wedding, and when they told everyone to stand and the bride came through, I couldn't see them. And I'm like, wow, that is a good point. So something to consider, and is okay, is that you can have the officiant make sure that you tell everyone, maybe prior to the ceremony, stay seated even when the bride comes through, and then everybody is able to be able to see the bride, which I think is a big thing. So again, this is just speaks to the customization of how you want your wedding to be. And I think a good way to end is to tell you this. The bottom line, whether I'm talking about ceremony, cocktail hour, dinner music, reception, is that couples out there, it is your day. Whatever you want, me as your DJ, I'm going to make sure it happens, okay? I'm not going to tell you, no, I can't do that. No way, because this is not about me. It is about you, the couple. So the customization is such a big key. And don't be afraid to try something different, right? Because if it speaks to you as a couple, then I would be the one person to say, green light, go for it, okay? Because it is important to you. And that's why shaping the music for all parts of the day are very important, okay? I don't just slap music on to slap music on. I want to make sure that the whole experience, or as my friend Joe Calamares calls it, the soundtrack of your day, right, is special. Because guess what? This is a special day. So there you have it. Quick recap for you. We talked about setup. We talked about microphones. We talked about the officiant. We talked about the music. And then we just gave you some extra tips within. And hopefully now you have something that you can just call your foundation and then build on it and make it your own. Like I told you early on, you're going to take the bad, you're going to throw it out from what you heard today. You're going to take the good and say, wow, that's a good idea. And then all the rest, you're going to make your own. And who knows, maybe you'll be doing the next episode telling other DJs what your ceremony breakdown looks like. My name is Steve Buzzard. That is it for this episode of Let's Talk Weddings. Can't wait to do it again when we talk to another vendor, or who knows, maybe it'll be another solo episode coming your way. Have yourself a great day.
Thank you so much for listening to today's Let's Talk Weddings podcast episode. Be sure to join Steve next time when he talks to another outstanding vendor in the wedding industry. The Let's Talk Weddings podcast can be found on all podcast platforms, including Apple and Spotify. Let's Talk Weddings is also featured on YouTube under Experience the Buzz. For more information about Steve Buzzard and his work, head to buzzardball.com or follow Steve on Instagram at BuzzardBallExperience.